My name is Marielle Granger. I am 63 years old. The dinner was meant to honor my husband 1 year since we buried him beneath the live oaks by the river. I had prepared a few words about his kindness, the way he believed any wound could be mended if you treated it gently enough. But as soon as I stepped into Daniel and Alyssa's dining room, I felt the tension stitched into every corner like invisible thread. Candles flickered on a table too bright, the silver polished to perfection. Alyssa stood at the head, radiant and cold, as if she were hosting a gala instead of a memorial. Daniel poured wine, avoiding my eyes. Their friends whispered near the buffet, faces tight with curiosity. I took my seat quietly. The soup arrived, beef consommé in white porcelain bowls, steam curling upward. Alyssa smiled thinly. "You've had a comfortable year, haven't you?" Marielle. Her tone was sugar over glass. "Living here, using the house. Daniel and I agreed it's time you move on. You've had long enough." I blinked, unsure I'd heard correctly. Daniel cleared his throat. "Alyssa," he warned softly, but she lifted the ladle, voice rising. 15 minutes. That's what you have starting now. The clock on the mantel read 8:30. 15 minutes to pack and leave this family. After all, you've already taken enough. The soup hit before the words settled. Hot liquid splashed across my face and hair, sliding down my blouse, dripping onto the white linen. The heat seared. But what burned worse was the silence that followed. Chairs creaked. Silverware froze midair. Daniel whispered something under his breath, but no one moved. I dabbed my cheek with a napkin. The room smelled of beef and iron. My heart did not race. It slowed. 15 minutes, I repeated quietly, meeting her eyes. Then we'll both keep time. I pushed back my chair. The legs scraped the floor, a sound sharper than shouting. Alyssa's smirk faltered. Just a flicker, but I caught it. I left the table, walking through the stunned faces toward the hall, where my old canvas tote hung on the hook by the door. The strap felt familiar against my palm, heavy with the folder I'd carried for months. Sealed and waiting. Behind me, laughter started again, brittle and forced. Someone muttered that I was being dramatic. I didn't turn back. In the quiet of the hallway, I opened the tote and brushed my fingers across the envelope marked Granger Trust. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice. 15 minutes had begun. I shut the bathroom door and leaned against the sink. The mirror caught me in pieces. Wet hair plastered to my temples. A blouse stained dark brown. Eyes too steady for the moment. I took the hand towel, dabbed the broth from my face, and ran cold water over my wrists until the sting faded. A knock came. Light, uncertain. Daniel's voice. "Mom." Alyssa went too far. She didn't mean don't lie for her. I said quietly. "You watched." He didn't answer. The silence on the other side of the door stretched thin. Then a sigh. The sound of him walking away. I opened my tote, the same one I'd carried since my hospital days. Inside, beneath an old wallet and my reading glasses, rested the folder, cream-colored, edges softened from being handled too many times. Across the top, in Dr. Pendleton's careful handwriting, Granger Trust, Amendment, and Deed. I traced the ink with my thumb. Every line inside had been signed, witnessed, and notarized. My husband's initials, my own, and the clause transferring full ownership after his death. Daniel and Alyssa's names were crossed out in thick pen, amended 6 months ago. Someone knocked again. Harder this time. Alyssa's voice, tight with fake concern. "Marielle, come back out. We can clean up and talk like adults." I slid the folder back into the tote. "There'll be time for that," I said through the door. 15 minutes. "Remember," her footsteps retreated fast. I fixed my collar, combed through my damp hair with my fingers, and looked once more at the woman in the mirror. The shame had cooled into something else calm, deliberate. I lifted the tote onto my shoulder and opened the door. The clock in the hallway read 8:45. The count had begun. After my husband died. The house felt too large for one person. The silence filled every hallway, every corner of the porch. When Daniel suggested he and Alyssa move in for a little while, I said yes before he finished the sentence. He was my only son. And she, though proud, seemed eager to make a home. I thought it would help all of us heal. The first few months were kind. Alyssa cooked on weekends. Daniel repaired the porch light that had flickered since the funeral. And laughter began to sound normal again. I let them take the upstairs rooms, kept my things downstairs near the garden. When they offered to pay part of the mortgage, I refused. The house was fully paid. My husband and I had made sure of that long ago. By spring, changes began to creep in small, almost polite at first. Alyssa replaced the curtains without asking. Daniel painted the kitchen a deep navy, explaining it was better for resale value. I didn't argue. I told myself a home should evolve. But when I came home from the grocery store one morning and found my wedding china boxed and labeled storage, something in me went still. Just making space, Alyssa said, brushing dust off her jeans. People our age don't need all that clutter. She said our age as if I belonged to another century. I started spending more time in the garden, where no one rearranged anything. I trimmed azaleas and weeded the beds until sunset, hands aching, pretending not to notice when their friends began calling it their house. One evening, I overheard Daniel on the phone in the den. "Yeah, the place is in our name," he said lightly. "Mom just stays here. We'll sort that out soon." The words slipped under my skin like ice. I waited until he hung up before stepping inside. "You might want to choose your words carefully," I said. He looked startled, then embarrassed. "I didn't mean Alyssa just people ask. It's complicated." "It's not complicated," I replied. "It's registered under the Granger Trust." "That hasn't changed." He nodded, but avoided my eyes. The next day, I found my framed wedding photo turned face down on the mantel. From then on, I stopped correcting them, let them speak, decorate, pretend. Paper spoke louder than voices, and I still had the only copy that mattered. I met Dr. Lewis Pendleton when I was 22, still trembling each time a monitor beeped too long. He was already a legend at Memorial Health Tall, spare, and patient in the way only the truly brilliant can afford to be. He used to say, "A steady hand is worth more than talent." Marielle. I carried that line through every crisis of my life. When he retired, I visited him once a month. His wife had passed, and he lived in a narrow house filled with books and dusty medical journals. I brought groceries, sometimes dinner. We talked about old cases, and he'd laugh that I remembered every dosage and every mistake. The last time I saw him, he was thinner, his voice like paper against air. "You gave me 30 years of loyalty," he said. "You built half that cardiac unit while they put my name on the door." "Don't talk like that," I said. "You taught me everything." He smiled faintly. "Then let this be my last lesson, protect what you've earned." He handed me an envelope and wouldn't let me open it until I was home. Inside was the initial draft of the trust, 1/3 of his savings, the rights to the small townhouse he'd kept since the 80s, and an advisory note to Marielle Granger, whose hands saved more hearts than mine ever could. I sat at my kitchen table all night staring at the papers, unable to believe such a man could think I deserved that kind of faith. Years later, after his passing, the trust finalized quietly. I put it away, never touched a cent. I only kept the clause he'd written himself, the one that gave me full authority to act as executor if the trust was ever challenged. I never imagined it would save me. It started with whispers in the kitchen, Alyssa on the phone, voice bright and rehearsed. "Yes, we can host corporate retreats here. The house photographs beautifully." When she hung up, I was at the counter peeling apples. Corporate retreats, I asked. She turned with a practiced smile. Just exploring ideas. Savannah is perfect for luxury events. Daniel and I are thinking of launching something Pendleton events. The name caught my breath. Pendleton. She laughed lightly. It sounds sophisticated, doesn't it? You don't mind, do you? I know you worked with him ages ago. I rinsed the knife under the tap. Keeping my voice even. He was my mentor. It's not a name to sell champagne packages with. Daniel walked in then. Though the trust amendment had already been filed 6 months ago, making any collateral claim void. Sleeves rolled up. The peacemaker's tone already set. Mom, it's just branding. We're building something real this time. Alyssa's got clients lined up. And the bank's interested. I dried my hands slowly. Which bank? He hesitated. First Coastal, small home equity line, nothing major. Alyssa jumped in, her charm slick as oil. We only needed collateral to get started. We'll pay it back before it even touches you. My pulse thudded. Collateral. Daniel's eyes flicked away. The house. Technically, but only partial. I stopped him. You used this house for a loan, Alyssa crossed her arms. We're a family. Marielle, it benefits everyone if it succeeds. Don't make this about paperwork. Paperwork was exactly what it was about. The trust documents. The deed all still in my name. I wasn't informed. I said quietly. Daniel's voice softened. The tone children use when they've already broken the glass. We didn't want to worry you. You've had enough stress since Dad. That night I went through the filing cabinet in my study. Among insurance papers and medical receipts, I found the loan notice, a printed statement addressed to Daniel and Alyssa Granger, co-occupants. Co-occupants, not owners. My hand steadied over the words until the tremor stopped. They'd gambled my roof for their dream. When I heard their laughter later from the porch, something in me hardened. I folded the loan paper carefully and slipped it into the folder marked Granger Trust. I wasn't angry anymore, just awake. The night began with candlelight and false warmth. Alyssa moved through the dining room like a hostess on television. Voice crisp, gestures perfect. Every detail gleamed: the linen, the silver. Even the wine I'd bought months earlier and stored for a quiet occasion. It wasn't meant for this. Everyone. Thank you for coming, she said, raising her glass. Tonight we're celebrating family, what we've built, what we're becoming. I sat at the end of the table, hands folded in my lap. Across from me, Daniel smiled too tightly, his jaw working as if chewing on guilt. Alyssa continued. This home has seen a lot. Granger House is more than a place, it's the foundation of everything Daniel and I have achieved, and none of it would exist without Mom's generosity. Her eyes lingered on me just long enough for the sweetness to curdle. The guests, friends of theirs, investors from her so-called luxury business, murmured polite agreement. Daniel cleared his throat. Mom, Alyssa wanted to thank you for letting us use the property for our new venture. It's really taking off. I looked at him, then at the unfamiliar faces watching me. Use, I asked softly. Or own? Alyssa's smile stiffened. Oh, we just mean in spirit. Everyone knows you've been staying with us. The laughter that followed was thin, nervous. My chair creaked as I sat back. Staying. I repeated. That's a new word for paying the taxes and maintenance. Daniel reached for my hand, whispering, please don't make this harder. But Alyssa leaned forward, voice sharp. We're moving ahead. Marielle, investors want control and clarity. We can't keep explaining why your name's still on everything. You've had your time. I felt every eye turn toward me. My husband's portrait hung behind Alyssa's shoulder, and for a moment it seemed to watch her, expressionless. I see, I said. Then what exactly do you plan to do with my house? Her lips curved. It's our home now. But don't worry, we'll make sure you have somewhere comfortable to go. Maybe an apartment closer to town. The table went still. Someone's fork clattered. I stood. 15 minutes, I said. Alyssa blinked. What? Then she lifted the ladle, almost lazily, and poured the soup straight over me. The liquid hit hot and heavy, the smell of beef and salt filling the air. Gasps broke around us. Alyssa set the ladle down, her voice calm and cruel. You have 15 minutes to leave my family. I wiped my cheek with a napkin, met her gaze, and nodded once. Then we'll both keep time. The clock on the mantel ticked loud enough for everyone to hear. The sound of the clock filled the room, each tick louder than the last. I walked back to the dining table, my tote on my shoulder. Soup still cooling on my blouse. Alyssa's laughter trembled at the edges, uncertain now. Daniel rose halfway from his chair. Mom, please, he said quietly. Let's not do this in front of everyone. In front of everyone, I repeated, setting the tote beside my plate. Seems like that's how you prefer it. I unzipped the bag and drew out the cream-colored folder. The room stilled. I opened it slowly, the paper whispering against itself. This, I said, sliding the first page forward, is the Granger Trust Amendment, dated 2 years ago. It transfers full ownership of this house and all associated property to me. It was signed by your father before he passed and witnessed by Dr. Pendleton and our attorney. Mr. Hall, Alyssa's voice cracked. That's not possible. Daniel told me Daniel's hands were shaking. I didn't know I laid down the next sheet bank correspondence from First Coastal. And this, I continued, is the letter confirming the home equity loan you secured without my consent. The collateral was voided the moment the trust amendment was filed. You borrowed against something you never owned. The color drained from Alyssa's face. You're bluffing. Check the stamp, I said, filed, notarized, and sealed. Daniel sank back into his chair. Why didn't you tell us? Because I hoped you'd act like family, not tenants. No one moved. Even the guests, those strangers with glasses of wine halfway to their lips, stared in stunned silence. Alyssa finally spoke, her tone brittle. So what happens now? Marielle, you throw us out. Make a spectacle of yourself. I looked down at the papers, at the black ink that had once just been precaution. No, I said. You did that for me. The mantel clock chimed 9. 15 minutes had passed. I gathered the papers, slipped them back into the folder, and set it in the center of the table. Keep them, I said softly. You'll need proof when the bank calls in the morning. No one dared breathe. The only sound left was the clock, steady and certain. The clock struck 9, sharp and final. I reached into my tote again, this time for my phone. The room watched as I scrolled to one number marked simply Hall, Attorney. Evening. George, I said, it's time. Send the notices. Alyssa rose halfway, her voice high and unsteady. What notices, eviction, and lien enforcement? I said evenly. You'll receive them officially by morning. But I thought courtesy demanded a call first. Daniel stepped closer. Mom, you can't mean that. I mean exactly what the law says, I interrupted. The trust protects the property. The bank will act once the paperwork hits. Alyssa laughed once, sharp and breathless. You wouldn't dare. Behind her, someone's phone buzzed. The banker among their guests looked down at his screen, frowned, glanced at the trust amendment filing, and muttered, They've blocked the account. Legally, it's no longer accessible. Alyssa turned toward him, desperate. What is it? He met her eyes. First Coastal just froze your business account. Her glass slipped from her hand, shattering against the tile. Outside, tires crunched over gravel. A flashlight beam swept across the porch. Daniel looked toward the window. Police, I nodded. The neighbor called when voices got loud. I told them to come through the gate. A knock followed. Firm. Professional. Savannah Police. A man called. Daniel opened the door. The officer, tall and calm, glanced at me, then at Alyssa's trembling hands. "Everything all right here?" "Ma'am, perfectly fine," I said. "Just finishing a family matter." He nodded once and stepped back. I turned to Alyssa. "You wanted 15 minutes. You got them." Daniel pressed his palms to his face. Alyssa stood frozen beside the ruined glass, her mouth open, but no sound left. The officer's flashlight swept the room one last time before fading down the drive. Months passed before I could walk through the house without hearing echoes. The furniture had been rearranged, the walls repainted, but what changed most was the silence. It no longer carried shame. Daniel and Alyssa moved out within the week after that night. The legal notices went through quietly, and when the bank auctioned off what they had built, no one came to bid. Daniel called once, voice cracked with exhaustion. I listened until he finished his apology. "You were right, Mom," he said. "We lost everything." "No," I answered softly. "You just learned what it costs to take without asking." Then I ended the call. The weeks that followed were quiet, filled with small repairs and long mornings by the water. I hired a local carpenter to mend the porch railing, and every evening I watched the sun settle behind the oaks, the river glowing the way it used to when my husband was alive. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a guest in my own home. When the paperwork from Dr. Pendleton's trust arrived, I didn't hesitate. I withdrew a portion, $200,000, and founded a small scholarship at Memorial Health. It would help nurses like I once was, those who carried more duty than recognition. The hospital called it the Pendleton Granger Fund. I asked that my name appear last. One afternoon, as the carpenter packed up his tools, he gestured to the porch light. "Wiring's old, ma'am. Want me to replace it?" I nodded. "Make it brighter, but keep it warm." That evening, I flipped the switch. The new bulb glowed steady and golden, spilling light across the porch steps and down toward the riverbank. It was brighter than I expected, reaching all the way to the water's edge. I stood there for a long while, listening to the cicadas, the hum of the light, the steady rhythm of peace. I didn't think about forgiveness, or revenge, or what might come next. The house no longer needed defending. When the wind rose, it caught the edge of the river and shimmered under the glow. I left the light burning, not for them, but for myself.